mean, it's part and parcel of the work I do as a defense attorney. We represent a lot of the kids that I've been talking about as, engaged in normal adolescent behaviors. But yes, I represent children who are accused of serious offenses. And I want to say a few things about that, is that even when children make mistakes, even when children engage in behaviors that have serious violent outcomes, that we as a society have to figure out what is the most effective and most humane way to respond for everybody involved, right? It matters that we get it right for the victim. It matters just as much that we get it right for the offender, right? Because if we get it wrong for the offender, then once they are released from prison or once the consequences have borne out, we're creating more violence if we do it wrong. So what does that mean? It means we need to have evidence-based rehabilitative responses for young people who engage in the most serious offenses. What does that mean? That means examples include family functional therapy, multi-systemic therapy, aggression repression therapy. There are a continuum of strategies, evidence-based practices rooted in psychology that have been proven to work, even with chronic offenders and violent offenders. Overlapping with that is the continuum of mental health services, pure mental health services, in addition to these community-based frameworks. But mental health services like one-on-one psychological counseling, evaluating young people for educational disabilities, cognitive limitations are critically important. When I talk about a continuum of mental health services, I'm talking about a continuum of mental health services that start for young people in school systems and carry into the community in ways that are made available to young people in ways that are not stigmatizing to them and that are culturally competent. So that's really important. In addition to that, we need to have credible messengers, violence interrupters, who tend to be organizations of folks who have been similarly situated, who have been in similar neighborhoods, who've grown up often in poverty, who've grown up in the face of violence, who've grown up without good educational opportunities and job opportunities, yet have managed to make it and succeed, and even have done prison time, mentor those young people. So that's part of what we have to do with young people who are engaged in violence. But let me also be really clear about something. Two other things that I think are really worth saying. One is that people also don't realize that so much of the serious violent outcomes start as some silly adolescent behavior that went awry. And people just don't get that. We're ready to sort of send the kid under the bus, under the jail, solitary confinement, never come back, life without the possibility of parole, death penalty even, not understanding that it was a kid who made a mistake, got in over their head, and ended up in a really bad situation. And here is the most powerful thing. You all think about Kyle Rittenhouse, okay? Kyle Rittenhouse, 17-year-old child, engaged in what started as the most quintessential adolescent foolishness. Right? He takes an assault rifle, crosses state lines to get an assault rifle from a friend who bought it for him, puts it around his chest, and is walking in plain sight. Quintessential adolescent impulsivity, maybe some sensation seeking, who knows? Certainly peer influence. He came to meet friends, not thinking ahead to the long-term consequences at all. He thinks in his 17-year-old brain that he has the capacity, he's competent enough somehow to go out and protect these businesses that somehow need his protection. He's got this hunting license, which was not a hunting license for people, a hunting license that he barely had, just got. And here he is out in public because he's a child thinking he's competent. And then what happens? He kills two people and severely injures another. And then how does he respond? He, his mother, and to be quite frank, his defense attorney rightfully argue that he's just a kid. He's a teenager who got in over his head. And he had to act in self-defense. And everyone buys it. He's now a hero in some communities because people saw him as a kid. They can imagine him as a kid. Well, let's map this exact same sort of factual scenario onto what we label Black kids as gang involved. How parallel is that, right? Your friends call you, hey, we got to go. There's some beef, happening, not thinking ahead, not thinking about how dangerous weapons are, not thinking that anything could ever happen. I'm just going to protect and serve. That's what I'm going to do, right? Not thinking that this could go awry, that I will ever even need to use a weapon in that context. And then you get out there, things get out of control, you get in over your head, and you too have to act in self-defense. But no, we don't see it that way. We label the kid gang involved, terror on society, beyond redemption. We transfer him, prosecute him as an adult, and send him under the jail for the exact same behaviors. It's no different. And we just can't see the adolescence in Black kids. So I really like to make that point. One is that really so much of the behaviors that we see that are violent and have really violent outcomes that need some accountability, but they start as normal adolescent behavior. It's important to know that because that shapes how you respond. You respond to an adolescent who is still amenable to rehabilitation, who's still amenable to guidance, support, and redirection. Critically important. We could see that in the Kyle Rittenhouse. You can't see that in so many Black kids. I mean, there's so many stories I could tell like that. Cameron Terrell, folks may not remember him. Anybody watching from LA or, reading about this who's from Los Angeles is going to remember the kid who a white kid, Cameron Terrell, started hanging out with the Crips, the Rolling Nine, I think they were called. White kid, because his parents were going through a divorce, he said, and his life was falling apart, so he needed to go, and he was intrigued by Black culture. And so goes and makes friends, and somebody gets killed. An innocent bystander gets killed in a shooting. And then he disavows, oh, no, I just was studying Black culture. I wasn't really in Black culture. He gets found not guilty. Not guilty. And it's absolutely unequivocal that he's gang involved, got all the gang tattoos, gang names, on Facebook, doing all the things that what we would call Black kids. It really is important for us to understand the differences, that we understand the underlying facts of these cases. What we see in the media is rarely the totality of what's happening. I care passionately about the needs of victims, but we cannot compromise due process, and we cannot throw away children who make mistakes. We have restorative justice frameworks and rehabilitative frameworks that answer that. How prevalent are the evidence-based best practices? So here's the deal. We need to invest more resources. So it's a policy question at the outset. Where are we going to invest our dollars? Are we going to invest our dollars in prisons and metal detectors and surveillance cameras and, or are we going to invest in what we know works and what we know works best for teenagers in particular? So the answer is they're prevalent in the sense that they exist and they've been tested and where they exist. So you think about multi-systemic therapy provides one-on-one assistance, one-on-one aid or support networks for a child in all of the different segments of their lives. So one-on-one aid to help them navigate family dynamics, maybe family violence or family discord. Might also provide some aid and support in the school system, be an advocate in the school system to make sure they are in an appropriate class, have tutors and have teachers who understand whatever learning disabilities they may or may not have, right? Thinking about someone who can help them navigate in that mental health space, acquiring mental health, the continuum of mental health services, again, in ways that are not stigmatizing to that young person and that are culturally competent, right? The mental health provider's got to be able to speak the kid's language, if you will. So it's this notion, literally as it sounds, multi-systemic therapy is this idea. It's not actual therapy, but it's liaison. It's the ways in which we connect kids or help kids navigate the systems in which they already operate and connect them with systems in which they don't have access to.